In tonight's news edition, at least 76 people are killed and more than 200 wounded in a blast in a district of Baghdad claimed by Daesh terrorists. Turkey's foreign minister says his country does not expect to deploy ground forces in Syria to fight Daesh as US jets start attacks on the terror group from a Turkish base. And the death toll from two huge explosions in an industrial area in the Chinese port city of Tianjin rises to 50, with hundreds more injured. Good evening and welcome to the news. We begin with Iraq. The governor of Anbar province said he's implementing a broad package of reforms as part of a campaign led by Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi to combat corruption and end sectarian and party quotas for government positions. Suhaib al-Rawi said he was dismissing all of his aides and advisors as well as district managers who had been in their post for more than 4 years or had performed poorly. As the Prime Minister presses with reforms, violence continues to haunt the government. At least 76 people were killed and more than 200 wounded in a blast that hit Baghdad and was claimed by the Daesh terrorist group. This report has more.
This is the district of Sadr city in the Iraqi capital, scene of one of the deadliest attacks in the country in about a year. At least 67 people were killed and 200 wounded in a blast that targeted a market in the mainly Shiite district. It is one of the largest attacks on the capital since Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi took office a year ago. A statement circulated online by supporters of Daesh terror group said the blast had targeted what it called a stronghold of the Shiite militias. The market in the northeastern suburb is one of the biggest in Baghdad, selling wholesale food items. Witnesses said they saw fruit and vegetables mixed with shrapnel littering the blood-soaked blast crater. Smoke rose from charcoal bits of debris. Rescuers pulling bodies from the rubble waded through sheet metal that had formed the walls and roofs of vendors' stands. Angry people gathered at the site of the explosion, some crying and shouting the names of their missing relatives and others blaming the government.
For the explosion, first, I think the market has no security measures whatsoever. The vehicle with a bomb entered here without any inspection. Here there is no protection by security soldiers. There was one security station before, but it was cancelled later.
Prime Minister Abadi took office last summer following the army's collapse in Daesh's takeover of the northern city of Mosul, then left the Baghdad government dependent on the militias to defend the capital and recapture lost ground. Security forces and militia groups are targeting Daesh in Anbar province, the sprawling Sunni heartland in western Iraq. However, Abadi has fixed his attention in recent days on a sweeping reform agenda aimed to overhaul the country's political system. Hala Dababne for the News at 10.
Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu said Turkey does not expect to deploy ground forces in Syria to fight Daesh, but added the option should remain on the table. He spoke a day after the United States launched its first manned airstrikes against targets of the Daesh terrorist group from Turkey's Incirlik air base. The combined joint task force said the US-led coalition had launched flying unmanned missions against the terrorists earlier this month. But the Turkish minister denied Incirlik was used from actual airstrikes or for actual airstrikes, instead saying US jets took off from the base for reconnaissance flights. Turkish security sources also said Turkish fighter jets were not involved in the manned US strikes yesterday. Last month, Turkey agreed to open its bases to the US-led coalition, a major policy change after years of reluctance to take a frontline role against the terror group pressing on its borders. On the Syrian-Turkish border, smoke billowed from the Syrian village of Qara Mazra as Syrian opposition groups fought to regain control of the town from Daesh. Clashes were visible from the Turkish side of the border, although it was not immediately clear which groups were involved in fighting. The village is near the area where Turkey wants to set up a buffer zone. Earlier this week, the Al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front said it has quit frontline positions against Daesh north of Aleppo and ceded them to other rebels, leaving an area of northern Syria where Turkey wants to set up a buffer zone. The leader of the Western-backed Syrian National Coalition opposition group, Khalal, discussed ways of resolving the Syrian crisis with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. Russia is pushing for a coalition to fight Daesh militants who have seized swathes of northern and eastern Syria that would involve President Bashar al-Assad, a longtime ally of Moscow. The National Coalition remains one of the main parties in international discussions to find solutions to the almost 4-year-old civil war. Hoxha said the Syrian regime is primarily to blame for the chaos in the country. Moscow hopes to host another round of talks between Damascus and various Syrian opposition groups. 2 earlier rounds of such consultations failed to yield any breakthrough. Addressing the Syrian delegation during talks held at the Russian Foreign Ministry in Moscow, Lavrov said all parties are interested in a political solution.
There is interest in putting a barrier in the way of terrorism. All parties are interested in the soonest political settlement of the crisis in Syria on the basis of the Geneva Communiqué, and the most important thing now is to transform these interests into coordinated practical steps.
At least 50 people were killed when 2 huge explosions tore through an industrial area in the northeast Chinese port city of Tianjin, where toxic chemicals and gas were stored. At least a dozen firefighters were among the dead. The Tianjin government said at least 700 people were injured, more than 71 seriously, and 2 fires were still burning. Last night's blasts were so large that they were seen by satellites in space as they sent shockwaves through apartment blocks kilometers away in the port city of 15 million people. Here's more.
Still reeling from the shock of 2 massive explosions in the city, some Tianjin residents have been forced to leave their homes. The blasts in China's port city of 15 million people severely damaged this nearby housing complex, injuring some residents and forcing them to leave.
The power of shockwave was so big it ripped off the windows and doors. The roof collapsed and injured people. They were bleeding.
Striking at around 11:30 on Wednesday night, the blast sent shockwaves through apartment blocks kilometers away. This man, who lived in temporary housing, says he rolled off his bed after the first shockwave hit. After scrambling downstairs, running for his life, the second blast hit. He said, "It's as if the sky collapsed. In a blink of an eye, the roof fell." The blast tore through an industrial area where toxic chemicals and gas were stored. There have been no reports of leaks, but some residents are concerned.
Very worried, very worried. At this moment, we don't know what chemical is in the air. We are worried it might be toxic and could be harmful in the future.
Grey clouds of smoke still billow above the site. Officials and state media say at least 44 people have been confirmed dead and hundreds injured.
At least 17 people were killed in heavy clashes between Daesh fighters and a rival Islamist group in the city of Sirte in central Libya. Earlier this week, a Salafist Muslim group and armed residents attacked Daesh terrorists in Sirte, about 500 kilometers east of the capital Tripoli, accusing them of killing a prominent preacher in Sirte. Residents said around 15 local fighters and 2 Daesh commanders were killed in today's fighting. Libya has 2 governments fighting each other for power, while Daesh and other armed groups exploit a security vacuum for control. The United Nations brought the main warring factions together in Geneva this week, but the diplomacy has been overtaken by fighting between groups not present at the negotiation table. It said the 2 governments agreed to end the political crisis and military conflict in the country within weeks. Palestinian sources said Israel agreed on opening a sea route between the Gaza Strip and Cyprus in exchange for a 10-year truce with Hamas movement and lifting their blockade on Gaza. The sources quoted by the London-based Al Hayat newspaper said ending the Gaza blockade would open the way for reconstruction in Gaza following Israel's 50-day war last summer. The sources said a deal is still elusive as Israel refuses to allow the rebuilding of the Gaza airport to go ahead and insists on a prisoner swap with Hamas. The Arabic-language newspaper said former envoy of the International Quartet, Tony Blair, had mediated indirect talks between Hamas and Israel, which led to the sea route agreement. Back here at home, President of the Turkish International Cooperation and Development Agency, Mehmet Siddiq Yildirim, said his agency would support Jordan in the technical capacity building and training fields. Yildirim was briefing Prime Minister Abdullah Sur on activities and programs of the Turkish agency in support of the development in many countries. Yildirim said the Turkish agency is interested in projects in the fields of education, maintenance of school buildings and mosques, health, water, culture, as well as small and medium-sized enterprises. Sur said Jordan has for long maintained close ties with Turkey and that the kingdom is interested in further strengthening cooperation. The Turkish International Cooperation and Development Agency is an affiliate of the Turkish Prime Minister's office. The Ministry of Education announced that the start of the new scholastic year for teachers will start on August the 24th and for students as of September the 1st. The decision came during a meeting of the Ministry's Central Planning Committee, chaired by Minister of Education Mohammed Ndibat, which also set the end of the first academic semester by January the 14th. The beginning of the second academic semester, Ndibat added, will commence on February the 7th and end on June the 12th. NASA said the annual Perseid meteor shower reached its peak yesterday and today in Europe. The annual phenomenon coincided with a new moon, making for stellar viewing conditions and giving stargazers the world over much to work with. The Perseid meteor shower is sparked every August when the Earth passes through a stream of space debris left by comet Swift-Tuttle. Andy Murray and Rafael Nadal advanced to the third round at the Rogers Cup in Montreal. Murray, who received a first-round bye, avoided the fate of so many other seeds, cruised past Tommy Roberto with a two-straight-set win. Roberto looked poised to force a second-set tie-break, up 30-love on serve at 5-6, only to lose 4 straight points and fall to the Scotsman. Next up for Murray is unseeded Jill Muller of Luxembourg. And number 7, Rafael Nadal, in his first hard-court appearance since March, showed few signs of rust as he used a dominating first serve to dust off Sergei Stakovsky of Ukraine 7-6, 6-3. To Queensland, Australia, a group of 8 kite surfers are attempting to set a new world record as they today started surfing 1,000 kilometers of the Great Barrier Reef. The surfers will spend at least 7 hours a day gliding over one of the world's natural wonders in the Kite the Reef endurance race. If they can make it to the 1,000-kilometer mark, they will be entered into the Guinness Book of Record as the longest distance traveled whilst kite surfing. The goal is to raise money for motor neurone disease research. Now, a look at the weather. It'll be fair tonight across the hilly areas and moderate in the Jordan Valley with northwesterly fresh winds. As for tomorrow, normal summer conditions are forecast for much of the country and hot across the eastern plains, the Jordan Valley and the port city of Aqaba. Winds will be northwesterly brisk, stirring up dust across the eastern regions. Now, a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. To close, our top stories once again. At least 76 people are killed and more than 200 wounded in a blast in a district of Baghdad claimed by Daesh terrorists. Turkey's foreign minister says his country does not expect to deploy ground forces in Syria to fight Daesh as US jets start attacks on the terror group from a Turkish base. And the death toll from 2 huge explosions in an industrial area in the Chinese port city of Tianjin rises to 50, with hundreds more injured. And that's the end of tonight's news. My name is Raad Lubtosh. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good night.